What's up, everyone? Jared Sandler here, getting ready for episode 30 of the Just a Seg podcast. We've reached the big 3-0, and we've got a great guest to represent this milestone. Before we get to our guest and the conversation, just want to remind you, I'd really appreciate if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel. And maybe more than that, I'd appreciate if you'd share these conversations with people who you think would enjoy them. Maybe it's a conversation with an athlete. Share it with your sports fan friends. Maybe it's a conversation like the one I had with former CIA operative Tracy Walter, which you can find on my channel. Send it to your friends who you think would find that sort of thing interesting. I'd really, really appreciate it. And of course, I'd love to hear from you. You can tweet me at Jared Sandler, Instagram at Jared Sandler _, and of course, you can just post in the comments section below. But we got to get to episode 30. That was just an appetizer. You'll get that joke in a second. It's not a good joke. It's about as good of a dad joke as I can come up with. Well, one of my really good friends, someone who I met a few years ago and is on the board of my charity, the Sandlot Children's Charity, is the man who makes it all possible at the iconic DFW steakhouse, Nick and Sam's. It's Chef Samir Dhurandhar, who has such an interesting story coming to America from India, landing at Nick and Sam's, and creating this giant of a restaurant. And I'm excited to share Samir's story and the restaurant story with you, because right now it's time for episode 30 of the Just a Sec podcast. All right, Samir, so the first question I like asking people is about their childhood. Nothing specific. You can take it in whatever direction you'd like, but when you think back to your childhood, what are the things that stand out, either, hobbies, interests, people who really influenced you, experiences? You don't need to answer all of those, but what are the things that really jump out at you when you think back to your childhood?
Probably my mother. Being a chef right now, I owe it all to my mom. She was a great, great cook, and she pretty much taught me a lot. She used to hold cooking classes, and I would be the little sous chef that would help her out. But just overall, she just kind of opened my eyes towards food. We always sat together as a family and ate dinner, and my mom would put out anywhere from 4 to 5 proteins and 4 to 5 vegetables, and it was always a feast, dinner time. And she kind of got me interested in this career I have right now. Influences. One little story I can tell you is the first 1989 was the first time we ever came to the U.S. My parents brought us here and to go to Disney World. We would do Disney World in Florida. My dad had studied in UCLA, so after Florida, we came to Santa Barbara, where his best friend lived there, and we were staying with him for a while. One morning, Uncle Bob comes to me. I was in the pool, and he says, "Can you come into the kitchen real quick?" And I walked into the kitchen, and there was a lady standing there. Uncle Bob says, "Samir, do you know who this is?" And I said, "Apologize, I don't." He says, "This is Julia Child." And it kind of all came together. I sat and talked to Julia for about an hour and a half about cooking and about life and just pretty much anything under the sun. And she told me, she says, "You should, if you're that interested, go to the Culinary Institute." And that's what I did the very next year. When I went back to India, I applied, and I came to the Culinary Institute in 1990. 3 months into the program, Julia was there signing books, and I put my book down in front of her, and she looked up at me and she said, "Samir, how wonderful to see you." And it blew my mind that she remembered me. And we talked for a little bit, but she's been a big influence, I think, for a lot of chefs, not just me. She brought us into the limelight, and we thank her for it. Our first year when we opened Nick and Sam's, she was here for a private luncheon, and I went up to her and I kind of gave her a little tidbit about the story I just told you, and she looked at me and she said, Samir, I'm so sorry, I don't remember you, but these are the best French fries I've ever eaten in my life. So that really made my day. So, between my mom and a little bit of Julia, I think it gave me a good enough push to do what I wanted to do.
What were some of your other interests? And you grew up in India. What were, other than, the food and culinary arts, what were some of your other interests growing up?
Sports. I played a lot of soccer, and you wouldn't think that now if you look at me, but I played a lot of soccer and cricket. A lot of ping pong. I was represented my school in ping pong, so that was pretty cool. I'm a big fan of. I've had a lot of friends, and we lived in this apartment building that we were about 18 of us that hung out together all the time. So between the friends and I wasn't a very good student, as you would think. That was always a struggle for me. But I loved the outdoors at that time. We would always be out, be at the beach, be downstairs, play soccer, whatever. But very active then, not anymore.
Okay, so you mentioned the friends. One of the things I wanted to ask you, and in full disclosure, you are one of my closest friends for people listening, and you're on the board of my charity, and you, I don't know that anyone can say or has ever said a bad thing about you, and you're so involved in community work and giving back. I guess I'm just curious where that came from. It's interesting you mentioned having a lot of friends growing up, and I think that's obviously the case now, but your love for people and the community, even people in the community you might not know, where did that come from?
I think I would say I've been blessed with a great life. I've been blessed with a great job, working with great people, working with the staff. No one else I could never ask for another better staff. I have two bosses that treat me like royalty. I have a great family. I have a beautiful wife, two kids, and I couldn't ask for anything better. So when you see stuff going around where people are hurting, people are kind of all over the place, what can I do to give back? I have everything. I need to give back. I feel obligated that I got to do something for people. And you know what? In a way, it satisfies me. For example, you stopped at a light and there's a panhandler comes up to you and asks for some money. And I always give them money. I don't know where the money is going to be used. I don't know what it's going to be used for. And hopefully, to better their life. But I know I did my part. That's the way I look at it. So during this whole COVID thing, and we were just doing takeout and delivery, and the revenue wasn't there, but a lot of our guests donated a lot of money to the restaurant to say, hey, you know what, give this to your staff. And I love my staff, but I wanted to give it back to the people who are really working hard for us, and that's what I did. We fed over 2,000 meals, and I feel good about it because I think I did my part. And I wish a lot of people would think that way. It does go a long way.
All right, so you grew up in India. You have raised two kids here in America. I know you maybe can't speak through the lens of growing up in America through your own experiences, but maybe perhaps through theirs. Culturally, what are some of the biggest differences about your experiences growing up in India and what you've seen either from your kids or just people in general growing up here in America?
I think the big thing is family. We were very close-knit as a family. I have two older sisters, and, we talked about dinner earlier. My dad would always say, I don't care what's going on, whatever you're doing, but 8 o'clock in the evening, we meet at this dining table and have dinner together, whether we speak a word or not. And that's it was always every religious holiday or anything, we would be together. And that makes a big difference. And not saying that we don't do it now. I think it's a little different growing up, even in my generation to the generation now, there's so much between the technology and between everything that is available to you. I think it's a little different, but myself and Laurie, try to keep things a little more family oriented. To hey, play a board game every Monday evening, all together, whether it's for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever it is. But just get everyone together and makes a big difference. Me growing up, I was fortunate enough to be in a family that was pretty well off. But I wasn't exposed to a lot of things in terms of, hey, you know what, I never got a chance to go out of the country till I was 18. My kids they've been blessed where we have taken them out of the country and they've seen different things. But I want them to see different things. I see a different culture in India compared to the culture here, and I'm not saying anything bad about it, but it's two different mediums, and it's good to have accomplished both.
All right. When you moved to America, what were some of the biggest challenges you dealt with that transition, whether it was professionally or, culinary school or just, personally away from that? What were some of the things you remember being most difficult?
The biggest thing I thought was just adapting. And a lot of people don't want to adapt. I think you have to stop what you're doing and adapt to your situation. I kind of went into the culinary. That was my first time going to college, going to school in America, and meeting different people. My roommate was 18 years old, or not even 18. He was 16 years old, and I was like 22, somewhere there. But just to walk in and he had a look on his face saying, oh, my God, I got to spend 2 semesters with this guy. And, we kind of started talking and he asked me all these questions, where I'm from and blah, blah, blah. Do I listen to music? And I said, yeah, and then I said, you know what, this guy, he says, where are you from? I said, from India. And he says, where's that? And I said, you know what, I'm going to take this guy for a ride. And he asked me all these questions, and he ended up believing me that my dad was the king of the western region of India, and I was a prince. And he would go and tell everyone in school about it, and people would bow down. Believe me or not, going to class in the hallways, people would bow down and say hello to me. So it was pretty funny. But I see that ignorance. In school, it was a little difficult in the beginning. Just for example, our first class was product identification, where they put on all these vegetables, all these meats up front of a table, and you have to list them and identify them. Never seen half of them. Never seen radicchio. Never seen fennels. A lot of herbs. Never seen. And I got a D in that class. And there's a gentleman sitting next to me. I don't want to mention any name, but he was sitting next to me, and he started laughing because I got a D. And that day I vowed that, you know what, I'm going to keep in touch with this guy throughout my career and to see where he is and where I am. And just that kind of gave me a spark to really, really work hard, because you're on your own. It's in a foreign country. I was lucky enough to have a sister, and she still lives in Long Island, New York, to go back to. They gave me a lot of advice. But again, for the most part, you're all alone, and you got to learn to adapt.
All right, so I'm curious, and you kind of shed some light on this, I guess, with your answer, but when you came to America, you went to school, what were your natural strengths as a chef, and where did you need the most work?
I would say the natural strength is, as a student, that I was willing to learn. I was willing to learn everything and anything that came across my way. As a disadvantage, I was working with ingredients that I had never seen before. So that was also, you could look at it as a disadvantage or an advantage. In a way, it was difficult, just because I had to spend extra time than anyone else in my class to really, really know about this. foods like sushi. I've never seen that before, coming from India. And so it was kind of difficult. Even it was kind of awkward to go out with your friends, and they would go to a sushi bar and know how to order sushi, and I had no clue. So it was a big change for me. But again, I took a step back, and as I said, you have to adapt to your situation. And you know what? It's not bad to ask somebody saying, "Hey, you know what? How do I cut this? How do I cut this red pepper? I've never seen a red pepper before." But a lot of people are not willing to take that first step.
All right, so one of your I guess big bullet points in your resume was when you were named the executive chef at Sfuzi's, and I think I read that you were the first chef allowed to create your own menu for the whole conglomerate. What all goes into that, like creating a menu and doing it not just for one location but for several? What was that process like, and what do you remember about that experience?
I'll be honest with you. I inherited that from my first chef. His name was Richard Pietramonico, and I always look up to him because he taught me a lot. But, I took over that position knowing that my restaurant was the flagship restaurant of the company. And we were right across from Lincoln Center in New York. And, they told me, "Hey, Samir, you can do what you want to do. You don't have to follow company rules." And, the corporate chef wasn't very, very happy with it. But that's where I learned that you got to give people what they want. You cannot cook what you want to cook. And a lot of chefs do that. They put stuff on their menu that they like to eat, and a lot of guests don't like it, and that's where we fail. And that's where I learned I did fail. I put stuff on the menu that people didn't want to eat, and didn't want to come back because we changed the menu. And that's where I learned that, hey, you know what, you got to step back, look at what your guests want, and cook that way. I really didn't have a lot to do with the rest of the company. But as our store, we were the number one store for a long time till Vegas opened up, and Vegas kind of took it over.
All right, and what led you to Nick and Sam's? What were the steps that brought you here to the Metroplex and specifically to Nick and Sam's, where you are to this day?
Well, the owner of Fuzi, his name was Patrick Colombo. I worked for him for a long time, always kept in touch with him. And he partnered up with Phil Romano to open up Nick and Sam's. And it's called Nick and Sam's. Nick is Patrick Colombo's son. Sam is Phil Romano's son. And Patrick gave me a call and asked me if I would like to come out to be a chef here. And, that's what I was good in New York. I was working, I was running a couple of breweries in New York. And, I decided, yeah, why not? Let me take a drive up there. You never know what's going to happen. And sure enough, that's the best drive I ever had.
You drove from New York to Dallas?
Yes, sir.
You didn't want to fly?
I didn't have any money to fly. I had $60 in my account, and I drove my green Honda Civic and with all my stuff in the car, and I landed up in Dallas.
All right. So, what do you remember about the early days of Nick and Sam's? And also, I guess what was your role when you first joined? I mean, was your role the same then as it is now, or was it a little different?
It was very different. I was just the chef. My responsibility was the kitchen and the food. The food also, I had a little bit of influence on the food, but not a lot. The Romanos and Patrick, and they knew what they wanted on the menu, between the steaks and certain fish. But, I had a little bit of influence. It was hard in the beginning. It was busy. People had a lot of expectations, and hopefully we met up to them, but it was very hard in the beginning. I'm a strong believer in staff, and I've always felt that staff is always number one, and that's why I take care of my kitchen people. As of now, about 70% of my kitchen is guys who started off with me in 1999. And I'm proud of it, because they like working here. I treat them well. And you know what? It's a busy restaurant. My role kind of changed a little bit down the road, where I started doing a lot more front of the house, and kind of developed into a situation where, I'm right now running all the place. So it's a matter of stabilizing yourself where you are, and I did with the kitchen, so I could walk out of there and deal with other things and try to make things better. But our first 2 years was great, and then we fell into a lull. First 3-4 years were great, and then we kind of fell into a lull, and we were just doing average business, and we were kind of scared to see where it was going. But and then suddenly, after the Super Bowl hit, this became the place to be, and this place was busy, and it kind of gave us a kickstart. And ever since Super Bowl, we've always done better numbers than the previous year up to today. So it's been good.
When you say the Super Bowl, do you mean when the Super Bowl was here in DFW?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. That really helped a lot, because people who were living around here, coming to staying around here, and they knew that this was the place to be, and it was crazy for that Thursday through Sunday.
You mentioned running the restaurant. What are your core values in running the restaurant? Obviously, I think people would be one of them. You've identified that. What are some of the other things that you think are most important to running a successful restaurant?
I think number one is the guest. We've got to take care of the guest, because otherwise they're going to go somewhere else. Whenever there's a waiter that goes on the floor, he needs to kind of spiel me out before he goes on the floor. Biggest thing I tell the waiters is, hey, let us know whatever's happening at your table, good or bad, because we can fix it in-house. Otherwise, once the guest leaves, it's very hard for us, if we did mess up, to bring him back. Number two is never say no. They're not in a position to say no. If someone wants something, I'd go down the street and go pick it up for them. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of times where we really cannot do anything, but I'd rather have the chef or the manager go by and, hey, you know what, here's the chef's card. Why don't you give us a call or let us know when you're coming in next? We'll make it for you. It's kind of hard to do it today. So you've got to give the guest a choice. And, same thing with reservations. People call, they want a 7:30. I apologize, 7:30 is not available. Give them options. You don't want to lose a guest, and it really bothers me. And again, getting back to the whole culture thing with the guest is, we say the guest is always right, and rightfully so. Most of the time, they're always right.
Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, what's one of the wackiest off-menu requests that you remember that you were able to fulfill?
I've been here 22 years now, so I really got to go back and think about this. But and nothing really stands out, because we always step back and say, let's go make it and let's do something. But nothing, if I think of something, I will let you know.
Okay. How do you, Samir, there are a lot of, I guess, restaurants that would fit the same genre is Nick and Sam's. And I guess, on a given night, if a family is trying to figure out where to eat and they're thinking, Chili's or Applebee's, they're probably not thinking Nick and Sam's among those choices. But, they're thinking, all right, let's, we want to go somewhere, have a really good meal. They're thinking Nick and Sam's, and, I know you're really close with Bob Sample, and maybe they think of Bob's. What's the it factor for Nick and Sam's? What's the separating factor you think that draws so many people to your restaurant, and why it is filled to the brim every single night?
I always say people go to a restaurant to go eat their food. But second time they go is for their service. That's the way I look at it. If you give them both at 100% level, you have a guest that won't go anywhere else. Bob's got the same steak, same meat that I do. He serves it the way he wants to serve it. I think we provide the flair around it. with the meat on the plate and the swarm service of all the sides and the piano playing in the background, the energy of the dining room. While they're eating the steak, they see this big cotton candy going out to another table. It's just little things that provide little stimulation. I try to provide 7-layer cakes. No one does that around town. I'm working on a ice cream donut sandwich right now. No one's doing in town. So you've got to give the guests something new all the time. You got it's I'm going to start making my own bread here. You have to keep up with the trends. Keep up with a lot of restaurants stay stagnant. And they're very happy with what they're doing, and that's okay. But we have to. I believe in providing something different for the guest every time they come.
All right, you mentioned the staff, and again, I'm not BSing you certainly or the listeners, but I've had the pleasure of spending some time at the restaurant and getting to know people on staff, and they all adore you. And you referenced earlier taking care of them. And that's maybe a simple way to look at it. But what are the things, how do you balance the relationships and how do you take care of them? Because I know, a kitchen can be intense. And I know, because of the variable that is the guest and the customer, sometimes, you deal with conflict. It's not always hunky-dory. Yet, these people won't say a bad thing about you if you offered to pay them $1 million because they can't. So clearly from a leadership standpoint, you are advanced as a leader and as a boss and as a teammate. So I know you said you take care of them, but what are the things that you do or how do you cultivate that trust in those relationships?
You can take care of people in different ways. Yes, the people who've been here for a while get paid pretty well. And you know what? The restaurant does well, so we can afford to pay them well. First of all, I think you just got to put everyone in an atmosphere that is good, is happy, is healthy. That's number one. Number two, we work hard enough to provide that the restaurant is busy all the time. So we're not sending people home because it's slow or anything like that. So, people make their money, they know that on a given week that they can do their 40 hours, if not more. The biggest thing for me is to getting to know them. There's a big difference between walking down the line and saying, hey, how's your family doing? How are your kids doing? What are they up to? It makes a big difference. A pat on the back saying, what a great job you did tonight. Those are the little things that really want people to be, you want to be around those kind of people. And I have a boss, and both the bosses, but mostly Joe Palladino, who's my partner and my boss, is very good at that. He will tell me the things that I want to hear from a boss. And you know what? It makes you feel that you're in a good situation and doesn't allow you to think that, hey, you know what, maybe I should look somewhere else or some of this. It's just that little feeling of knowing that, hey, you know what, he's looking out for you. He knows I'm around here. So that's what I would say that's what makes a big difference.
All right. You mentioned, the menu and hey, you cook and you serve the guests. It's not necessarily what you want. And you also just talked about trying new things. And I think that's a really cool element of Nick and Sam's. How do you approach, I guess, the freedom to be creative? And I'm curious, what's the best thing you've tried, something that just became an absolute hit? And what's something that you tried and it just, for whatever reason, didn't work out?
Well, as I said, I'm always looking at what guests like. And I try to take the simple things and make them a little better. For example, a few years ago, we decided to, we were doing a fried lobster. And I said, hey, you know what, let's do a buffalo-style lobster. And we made a buffalo sauce and we did a buffalo lamb. That went really well. One day I was eating Chinese food. I forget where, but we had kung pao shrimp, and we were eating that. And I said, you know what? Why can't I do a kung pao lobster? And we started doing a kung pao lobster, and those two have really stuck around for a while, and people love it. The cotton candy, the simplest thing you can do, but I decided to do it bigger. I want a showstopper. I want people to stop what they're eating and turn around and see and say, "What's that?" The sushi, and I won't take full credit for the sushi, but Joe Palladino was insisting that I would do it, and we finally did it. And I think that's one of the best additions we've had in the last few years. The things that there's a lot of things that haven't really worked. We've tried different things, but they haven't worked, and nothing really stands out. But you have to keep trying. You have to. You never know what's going to stick, what people are going to like, and the minute you stop trying, that's where you get stagnant.
What I'm curious, I've never really asked you about this. Food critics, like if you watch a movie about a restaurant, the food critic is the antagonist and usually a part of it. What are your experiences and relationships like with food critics, and how much do you even worry about food critics now that, this restaurant is established?
Oh, food critics, I believe, sometimes can make you or break you. Especially in a city in New York, and where if there's a solid food critic, a lot of people follow it. We've had really good food critics here, and I have, a lot of chefs have a lot against them. Yes, it's upsetting to read a bad review, but you've got to step back and say, hey, you know what? Maybe they were right. Maybe that chicken was overcooked, or maybe that steak was not seasoned well. And it gives you a chance to kind of look back and talk about the chicken with your chefs and talk about the steak with your chefs and try to make it better. As I said, yes, it's upsetting with food critics coming to your restaurant and kind of judging what you do just from their taste, where you just fed 400 other people that had a great time. If, people do read that and say, hey, I'm not going there, and that's great. You know what? But we have to get better at what we do. And that's why we are busy. We are busy because we try to be better than yesterday all the time. I try to push my managers, my staff, my chefs to get better. And the minute you stop, they're going to go somewhere else that's getting better. And that's what I'm most afraid of. I get nervous when walking into a restaurant and there's only 200 on the books. And it's nerve-wracking to me because we should be doing 400. Even last month, with everything going on in the country, we had tremendous sales. I was surprised where we were. And we've been closed for a week because of the curfew. We opened on Saturday. And Saturday, about 2:00, we were told that you can open. And by 10 o'clock, we had done 450 covers. So it goes to show that, hey, you know what? We need to create a place where it's a safe bet. There are a lot of guests who come here that can only dine once in every 6 months because that's what they've saved their money for. I want them to come here and they say, you know what, we need to go to Nick and Sam's because we're going to have a great experience there. We are in the business of making memories for people. And the minute we stop doing that, we will be closed.
All right, last topic I want to cover. Your restaurant has become, it's a destination. I don't know how many people come in from out of town, particularly just because this is the world I'm, I guess, more familiar with. I certainly don't have this lifestyle, but, with the athletic world, athletes, coaches, they come to town for a game, for a series, whatever. It's, you can oftentimes find them at Nick and Sam's. Dirk, there's recently coverage about the restaurant and athletes, specifically Dirk, and the connection to the Mavericks, and there are plenty of the big name Cowboys that come in. This restaurant is evolved into a destination. Well, is that a source of pride? Is that a source of pressure because expectations? How do you approach the fact that so many quote unquote celebrities view this as their go-to spot?
I think there's pressure every day. The minute there's no pressure, that's when, people kind of just slide to the side. There's got to be pressure who's coming in. Yes, every chef says everyone's a VIP. Yes, absolutely. But there are certain people who do come in here that we do go the extra mile for, and for many reasons, because we know how they support us. We know how many times they come in. And, we know how many people they're going to tell. Dirk's been a great advocate for Nick and Sam's. And, I'm blessed to be friends with him too. And he's a different animal. He is such a down-to-earth person. And he doesn't expect a lot. But you know what? We have to, because he is the number one athlete in this town, and always will be in my eyes. Those are the people that we go out of the way for, do special things for, and you know what? We need to do that with every guest. And but some people do stand out, and that we need to go after. Football players. The young players like the atmosphere here, not mainly the dining room, more so the bar, where, it's a little more energetic, the music is different, the service is a little lax compared to the dining room. And, shouldn't be saying this, but there are certain athletes that we give them a little code on their phone that they can play their music in there. And you know what? As an athlete, I would love that. Go there and play my own music, eat some great food, and go home. So the little amenities we give some of our celebrity friends, and it goes a long way. They tell all the teams that, different teams give us a call saying, hey, can you cater our locker room? Can you do this? Golden State has been, we've been catering Golden State for last 4 years now, every time they come into town. And they love it, and it's good to know that, again, they have a place they can go to and make sure everything will be perfect.
And I think one of the things I respect and appreciate most about you is that you don't just totally kowtow to all these celebrities. I mean, you expect them to treat people right, and whereas I think some people, it's fill in the blank celebrity, he can do whatever he wants, he can do no wrong. I think the athletes, the celebrities who maybe are regulars, who you have those relationships with, you have those because they treat people right. They go about things the right way, and you're not afraid to let them know or let anyone know, really, if they're not going about things the right way or treating people right. I think that's a really cool thing, because I think some people would be scared to do that because it's a powerful celebrity, but that just doesn't seem to capture you. What captures you are people who treat people the right way.
Absolutely. You got to. I don't care how high you are and what you do. You got to take the time to treat people right. And, at every restaurant you see celebrities going there. A lot of chefs will pick up their check, stuff like that. And, I have a few here and there that will come and I'll pick up the check. But in turn, these athletes tip the waiters $500 on a $200 that check, whatever that check was. That goes a long way. That knows that, hey, you know what? I'm going to take care of you every time you come in here because you didn't have to do that. And so the staff treating people, sure, absolutely. That it means a lot to me. And, I treat everyone the way I think I should be treated. And hopefully that's a good thing. But it goes a long way when you do treat people right.
Is Sean Sharif the biggest celebrity who graces your presence at Nick and Sam's?
I was looking to hire Sean as valet, but it kind of just became a friend of mine, Sean's a good guy. God bless him.
Well, Samir might be onto something. I'd love to see Sean get his hands dirty at the restaurant. We might have to cook something up, if you will, and make that happen. Well, that was episode 30 of the Justice Sec podcast with my friend, Chef Samir Dhurandhar. And I hope, if nothing else, after listening to that conversation, you take away how good of a person Samir is. He is incredibly involved in the community, and a lot of people say, well, I want to treat people how I'd like to be treated. I don't know if there's anyone in DFW, anyone I know who demonstrates that as well as Samir does. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Just a Sec podcast. I'm trying to release 2 conversations a week, so be on the lookout because we've got more coming. 30 down and a whole lot more to go.